What do a Zionist, a communist? This sounds like a bad joke, doesn't it? What do a Zionist? I'm laughing, and the show hasn't even started yet. What do a Zionist, a communist, a fascist, and a eugenicist have in common? What they have in common is most people couldn't define any of them. And no, this is not the beginning of a bad joke. It's a statement of something that's become a serious problem. But the thing is, it's not a new problem. It's an old problem. Because the beginning of wisdom is supposed to be a definition of terms. And that's an old idea. That's a very old idea. And yet here in 2026, we seem, if we ever remembered it, we seem to have forgotten it entirely. We argue about words. We fight about words. We destroy relationships over words. But very few people stop and ask, what exactly do you mean by that? When I was, I don't know, maybe 13 years old, maybe not even quite that, I was called a communist by a well-respected member of the community who is a history teacher at the school that I went to. And I was not because I was a communist, because he didn't know what the word meant. And this is particularly heinous. And I'm going to talk about this more, not now, but we'll get to it. But once I came to terms with the fact that he really didn't understand what the term meant, and this was an explosive thing to me. I mean, this was a life-forming event. This was a signal event in my life, because I realized, and I could hardly believe it. And I think that maybe many people have such events in their lives, but I realized that I was relying on a person who is much older than me and estimable in the community, at least so far as I knew, who was supposed to be teaching me. In fact, he was respected by the school and the community, but he was engaged, and he was a history teacher, for crying out loud, a history teacher. And yet he was engaged in what I can only call academic sloppiness and intellectual laziness. And once I understood that, I began noticing the same thing everywhere, and it kind of corrupted me. And here I am on this radio show, and we'll get to that. But now let me not forget myself, okay, and say, welcome to Politics by Jake. This is the weekend show, part one, June 20th. I'm laughing so much. I don't know why I'm laughing. June 20th, 2026, part one. And on the show, I break down political and economic reality so you can understand what's actually happening in the world and how to position yourself. And if you want that kind of analysis, and I think it's creditable, if I do say so myself, applied directly to your situation, I do offer private one-on-one strategy session. And the link is in the description. Go to Rumble or YouTube, where these things are usually posted, and you'll see it there. Now, I was just looking at a clip of Marlon Brando, and he was on an interview. He had refused to accept his Oscar for The Godfather, and he sent an Indian woman to complain about the treatment of Native Americans and that he wouldn't do it. And he had this 1996 interview with someone who was extant at that time in the community and well-known. His name's Larry King. He's an old radio show announcer. He also had a show on TV. And in it, he interviewed Brando, and Brando made remarks about the entertainment industry that generated enormous controversy. And in that interview, he said, among other things, he said, and I'm laughing because it's so stupid that it's actually funny. But it's kind of more that it's pathetic. And it's all too common a mistake, all too common an error. And he said that Hollywood had been run by Jews historically, had been run by Jews, and that he was frustrated that various ethnic groups could be criticized while Jews could not. And he used words like the word Zionist. He used that. And he used the word Jewish in ways that people who were listening to it and watching it viewed as conflating Jews generally with power structures in Hollywood. And the comments were widely condemned as anti-Semitic. And Brando later had to apologize. And he said he didn't believe the Jews as a people should be blamed for the behavior of a few individuals. And I was always troubled by this, even when I couldn't tell you why. And we're going to use this as a springboard for our conversations today. So let's talk about some definitions. We're gonna talk about some definitions. Here are the definitions I was operating on under the time. The narrow historical definition of Zionism and Zionist, for example. Zionism was originally, this goes back to the 19th century, late 19th century, a political movement that arose, and their central goal was the establishment of a Jewish homeland in the historic land of Israel. And this movement emerged partly in response to anti-Semitism, which was always around, pogroms, and the belief that the Jews would never be fully secure as a minority population in Europe. So they had to go to their own place, They had to have their own land. And under this definition, a Zionist was simply someone who supported the creation of a Jewish national homeland. Easy peasy. And historically, that is by far the cleanest definition. So now we get to 1948. Post-1948, after the establishment of Israel in 1948, the meaning shifted. And many people began using Zionist to mean a person who believes Israel has a right to exist as a Jewish state. And under this definition, a person can be a Zionist without agreeing with every Israeli government policy, just as a person can support the existence of the United States without supporting every American president. The political definition, some people use Zionist to mean someone who actively supports Israeli national interests or particular Israeli policies. Now we're in a different category because there are Zionists who disagree strongly with one another. For example, some Zionists support a Palestinian state. Others do not. Some are politically left-wing. Some are not. They're politically right-wing. So the label alone is problematic. You see, and it doesn't tell you much. If someone says you're a Zionist, what does that mean? This is where the confusion starts. Most people used, or I should say many people, use Zionist as a catch-all term, and they don't define it. For example, the Zionists control Hollywood. The Zionists control this. The Zionists control that. Well, what are you talking about? Which Zionists? Which organizations? Which people? And when you say control, what do you mean by control? You see what I mean? Without definitions, the statement becomes analytically weak and it becomes intellectually weak. It's sloppy. This is exactly the problem that I'm describing with the story that I'm about to tell about this. I don't even know if I should give his name. He is long since passed by now. This teacher, this respected person in the community, calling me a communist. So let's get back to Zionism. What Zionism is not, one of the most important distinctions, Jewish and Zionist, these are not the same. A Jew is a member of a people, a religion, or a cultural group. A Zionist is someone who holds a political position regarding Israel. And when I say hold, I don't mean that they're the chancellor or the prime minister. I mean they have a political attitude. They have a position that they take with regard to Israel. Those categories overlap, but they're not identical. For example, many Jews are Zionists. Some Jews are not Zionists at all. Many non-Jews are Zionists. I talk about on the show sometimes my Christian Zionist friends. And some Christians are strongly Zionists, and you have Christian Zionists in the United States, strongly Zionist. Some Israelis are anti-Zionist. So Jew does not equal Zionist, okay? In the same way that American does not equal Republican, or for that matter, American does not equal Democrat. The categories overlap, you see, but they're not identical. If somebody says he's a Zionist, your next question should be, okay, what do you mean by that? Do you mean he supported the historical creation of Israel? Do you mean he believes that Israel has a right to exist? Do you mean he supports the current Israeli government? Do you mean that he supports a pro-Israel political organization? Or do you mean something else? And until that question is answered, the term remains perhaps fatally underdefined. And that's precisely the kind of imprecision that has bothered me ever since the days of this teacher. And throughout this entire conversation, I'm not objecting to the word itself. I'm objecting to people who use the word as if it settles the argument when it actually begins the inquiry, which it does. Once you say that, you've only started. You haven't finished. Now, as to what Brando thought he meant, Brando's worldview was often anti-disestablishmentarian. He trusted he distrusted large institutions, corporations, governments, concentrations of power. He was involved in civil rights causes, Native American causes. Like I said, he sent the Native American woman not to accept the Oscar, but to reject the Oscar. And, she made a speech. He was involved in civil rights causes, Native American causes, anti-apartheid activism. So when he talked about Hollywood, he often framed it as a small, powerful group of people controlling cultural narratives. And the problem with that is that in that interview, he tied that criticism to Jews and Zionists in a way many people regard as ethnic or religious stereotyping rather than a critique of specific individuals or institutions. So there are really two layers here, okay? Brando's intended argument, as he saw it, number one, powerful elites influence media. Number two, Hollywood shapes public opinion. Number three, certain groups have disproportionate influence. And the reason why it became controversial was he generalized from individuals to an ethnic and religious groups. Many listeners heard it as an old anti-Semitic trope, which had no place in American society, has no place now. Unfortunately, it has more place now than it used to, and that's one of the reasons why we're talking about this, about Jewish control of media and finance. He was criticized for attributing institutional behavior to an entire people. And one thing that's very Brando-esque is that he often mixed insightful critiques of power with sweeping and provocative statements. Sometimes those landed, and sometimes they exploded in his face. And speaking of that, remember when Ricky Gervais hosted the Golden Globes? Gervais, really, remember him? He's great. He's a great comedian. I enjoy him very much. Great stand-up. He's kind of an attack dog comic, and he went after Hollywood, and he was he hosted the Golden Globes. I think they had him hosted twice, and he went after him each time. When he went after Hollywood, he wasn't typically making an ethnic or a religious argument. His argument was more, you people preach virtue while participating in an industry that is full of hypocrisy, exploitation, ego, and selective outrage. And the reason, and if you pan the room, everyone was sitting there quietly. It wasn't necessarily because every accusation was true. It was because, number one, he's a comedian. Comedians used to be called fools in the old days. Many of the targets were recognizable industry controversies, and Hollywood has long had a culture of public image management. So silence can mean he's right. Arguing makes it worse. It's a comedy show. He's trying to be funny. Or it could mean all three at once. So silence, in this case, is evidence of discomfort. It's not necessarily proof of guilt. So this is the problem that Brando had. Suppose somebody says Hollywood is controlled by Zionists. The immediate problem is, and you hear this criticism increasingly because there's a much louder voice on the reactionary fascist right. And I just used two things that I should define, and I will define them, and I have defined them. And I've done shows on them, and I've done clips that you can go to YouTube and look at with regard to them, and I will define them again. Not going to do that now. Have other fish to fry. But the immediate problem, Hollywood is controlled by Zionists. What do you mean by controlled? And what do you mean by Zionists? See, without definitions, the statement is nearly meaningless. Historically, Zionism, as I said, was a political movement that emerged in the late 19th century. The basic idea was the Jewish people should have a homeland in their ancestral territory. The leading figure is often considered someone to be called Theodor Herzl. The movement eventually contributed to the establishment of Israel in 1948. So this is where things can get complicated. A Zionist can mean someone who believes that Israel has a right to exist as a Jewish state, someone who actively supports Israel national interests, someone who supports particular Israeli government policies, someone who supports the historical creation of Israel. These are not the same thing. Many Jews are Zionists, some Jews are not Zionists. Many Christians are Zionists. Some Israelis oppose Zionism in various forms. So this is why precision matters. Suppose somebody says Hollywood contains many executives who support Israel. This is an empirical claim. You can investigate it. Suppose somebody says Hollywood is controlled by Zionists. Now we're in very different territory. Questions immediately arise. Which people? Which studios? What does controlled mean? What evidence exists? Are we talking about business influence, for example? Are we talking about political influence? Are we talking about cultural influence? Without those definitions, the statement becomes too vague to analyze. Now, something I talk about on the show. Well, I mean, let's take a break. At this point, let's take a break. We're getting into another topic here, and let's take a commercial, break the station, get a commercial in for Twain Consulting, and then we'll be back. This is Politics by Jake, and we'll be right back. And now here's a word from one of our sponsors, Twain Consulting. Hi, this is Jake with Twain Consulting. Let's be blunt, shall we? America is litigious. It's unstable, and it's financially weaponized. If your name is on everything you own, you're a sitting duck. At Twain Consulting, we help you vanish legally, ethically, and permanently. From land trusts to layered LLCs, we teach you how to restructure your assets so the predators can't see them and can't touch them. This isn't a loophole. It's a strategy that the wealthy have used for decades. Isn't it time you got the same protection? Call Twain Consulting at 805-380-5699 or visit us online. Protect what's yours before someone else claims it. And now let's get back to Jake and Politics by Jake. All right, and we're back. This is Politics by Jake. And on Politics by Jake, I break down political and economic realities. Just like we're doing now, we're talking about definitions. And I do that so you can understand what's actually happening. Because I'm concerned that people don't understand what's actually happening. You may think that's presumptuous. You may think it's well-intended. You may think it's completely on point. I think it's completely on point. That's why I do the show. And I do it so you know how to position yourself and your family and protect your loved ones in the world. If you want that kind of analysis applied directly to your situation, I do offer private one-on-one strategy sessions. The link is in the description. Go to YouTube. You can see it there. And that's it. Okay, so we've had our commercial, and now let's go on with the show. Now, I have talked on the show many times. I have certain things that I refer to on the show all the time. And one of the things is Cui Bono. And Cui Bono is actually, it's a precise framework. And it can be helpful and useful to you if you will use it. And Cui Bono, the Romans had an excellent thing. They really did, in my opinion. They had an excellent thing that they used to do. They reduced essential truths to adages that were almost proverbial. And the value of them is if you would follow them, they would lead you to things that were either spot on true or things that were pretty close and involve a legitimate analysis as to what's true. And so one of them was Cui Bono, Cui Prodest. And Cui Bono literally means to who's good. I can explain the grammar to you, but I don't want your eyes to glaze over any more than they usually do when you listen to my show. Cui Prodest means to whose profit. So Cui Bono, Cui Prodest, to whose good, to whose profit. Who profits? This is a precise framework. Think about it for a minute. Instead of, and let's apply it, instead of group X controls everything, ask who benefits, who makes the decisions, who owns the asset. You see what I mean? This is how you apply this. Who finances the project? Who bears the risk? Who receives the reward? Those are concrete questions. Those are investigative questions. They avoid the trap of reducing institution to entire ethnic, religious, or national groups. Now, this is important because obviously, when Jake says something like this, I don't immediately, when you and I are in a conversation, you don't need to come back and ask me these questions, but you need to ask yourself these questions if you're going to be an informed citizen of this republic and make intelligent decisions as to who should govern us and who should lead us. And I've told you many times that I think that Donald Trump shouldn't be leading us. I think he's bad. And the reason why is because I apply the concepts of Cui Bono, Cui Prodest. All Donald Trump has ever done in the presidency is to enrich himself. And increasingly, he is becoming to be seen, and everyone is realizing that this is what he's done. And the ways that he has sought to do this and the things that he has done merely in about a year and a half in the presidency are so many that it's not important and worthwhile to go into them here. Everybody pretty much knows anymore that this is what he's done. You can call this business. You can call it capitalism. Maybe he belongs in business. He's a failed businessman. He's done about 7 or 8 enterprises. They all failed. But extractive predatory extraction. He knows how to do that. He's a white-collar criminal, 34-time felon. I talk about this on the show all the time. Unfortunately, I am sorry to say it, but he's been adjudicated a rapist, which in a civil trial which is with regard to whether he should receive, someone should receive money or not. It's not called guilt. It's called culpability, or it's called liability, because the remedy is money. But you have a situation where a judge, and this is interesting, and I haven't talked about this on the show, and nobody's come back at me and said anything about it. This is kind of a digression from what we were talking about. But nobody has come back to me and said, well, you know, in a civil trial, the burden of proof is different. And if you came back to me and said that, I would say, yes, you're right. It is. There are two types of trials: civil proceeding, or a criminal. Well, basically, generally, there are two types of proceedings. One is a civil proceeding, and the other is a criminal proceeding. And in the criminal proceeding, the standard of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt. And in a civil proceeding, the standard is by a preponderance of the evidence. In other words, basically 51%. And you could say, well, Jake, how can you say he's a rapist? Because the court was operating under a different burden of proof. And I say, but the judge was interviewed afterwards. And the judge said that if this was brought to a criminal jury, in a criminal trial, not that the jurors were all criminals, in a criminal case, if this was brought to a jury, and once again, what's implicit in that statement is that he's talking about this enhanced burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Not a preponderance, not a mere 51% or more, but beyond a reasonable doubt. And the judge said if this was brought in a trial, in a criminal case, and it was brought before a jury, he would be found guilty of rape. So, I'm sorry. I hate to talk about this stuff. I hate to bring such accusations as this. But these are things that are settled in law. They've happened. And of course, as I've talked about, what does Donald Trump do except seek to pursue a federal indictment against the person that he raped, which is E. Jean Carroll? It's just very unfortunate to have to talk about these things. But this is showbiz, I guess. This is the show that I do. And a person like this does not belong in government. Nobody who does these things belongs in government. You can use the old expression, they need to spend more time with their family, which is a very benign, very vague and generalized way to say it, or that they need to go into business, that they're better suited to business. Adam Smith talked about capitalism in 1776 in a well-known book called The Wealth of Nations. And he said that capitalism entails certain things, and one of the things that it entails is risk. There's a difference between this and predatory extraction, but I don't think that's in the script for the show today. So we're not going to get into that, but we're just basically going to say he belongs in business. So he can fail for a 9th time or a 10th time and do that. But he's in government and he doesn't belong there. Look at what has happened in Iran. Look at all the withholding that we barely know what's gone on in that war. We barely know. These things are being withheld from the American people. The American people have a right to know, but they're not knowing. Look at the Epstein files. The American people have a right to know, but typically the files are being redacted. Everything's crossed off and you can't tell anything. So anyway, this is a problem. Okay. Well, all right. I'm sitting here thinking about situations here. Let me go further on this. Let's talk about the capitalism thing. I guess this wasn't in the script for the show today, but let's talk about it, okay? A capitalist, remember I made a statement which I am informed not too many people talk about. I'm the only one who's talking about. capitalism versus what I call predatory extraction. Adam Smith talks about capitalism. And this is definitions, so this is okay for us to talk about. I wanted to talk about definitions on the show. The way it's going, we're running out of time. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to it all, but we'll try. Adam Smith says that a capitalist is a person who takes risks with capital. That's what they do. A capitalist creates value, ideally. A capitalist may succeed or a capitalist may fail. And a capitalist profits because value was created. Now, predatory extraction is something that I've talked about, but I have not given you a definition of, and I want to give you a definition of it now. Predatory extraction is different from capitalism. The extractor is not primarily interested in creating value at all. An extractor is, frankly, a criminal, but an extractor is interested in transferring value, minimizing risk. They don't believe in risk, externalizing losses, and capturing gains. This is a different enterprise than capitalism. It's clearly distinguishable from capitalism. And you know, in law, profession I was involved with for a considerable amount of time, I've seen a lot of bankruptcies. I've seen a lot of bankruptcies in my legal career. I've talked on the show before about how I've never liked them. And I always wanted to get out of them when I was in the legal profession. But, you know, when you're in the legal business, it's just like anything. Sometimes you have to go where the money is. And there were so many bankruptcies going on. And I'm talking actually to predatory extraction. And they're going on for a reason that I was always suspicious about. And people really suffered. And they were suffering because they had learned somewhere, and I'm not really feeling like I want to challenge the learning, whether it was impractical or whether it was naive. I don't feel like I want to do that. They learned basic, what I would call, I think we would all call basic principles. They learned principles that they internalized, and they made a part of their self-worth, like you pay your bills, like honesty, and, you know, related moral concepts like this. And, you know, I'm fine with that. But the problem comes, and the people who implemented these ideas, which we call globalization, which is a form of institutional, systemic predatory extraction. And that's the only way you can describe it. They made these a part of their self-worth. I call globalization the wound on the show, and which, you know, honestly, it's one of the pillars of the show, and it should be, because it explains something that people don't necessarily understand because of the internalizations that I have just mentioned that they have. Bankruptcy is just, it's actually a remedy, but they think it's a wrong. They think it's a shame. It's a remedy. It's designed to provide relief. I can't tell you how many discharge hearings I've been to. And the judge always gets in there. The debtors are not required to go to the discharge hearing. Many of them do, some don't, because they're ashamed, because they feel that they've failed. And this is just, I can't tell you, but I'm going to try to tell you. The judge will basically give a pep talk and say, look, this is not a bad thing. This is a good thing. This is a remedy that the law provides. It's designed to provide relief. I can't tell you. It's something that the law has provided so that you can get a fresh start. And the judge will go on and go on like that. And it's true. That's exactly how I look at it. And that is the kind of attitude that I want to enforce upon you as well. it's a remedy. It's a fresh start, and people will say yes, and they will internalize these things, and they will fight it, and they will try to do anything. It's just like the absolute last thing that they will do, because it flies so much in the face of so much of their fundamental attitudes about self-worth, and to which I say, with you, I'm happy, I agree, but these are not normal circumstances. And the other things that you have to consider is what you do. And this is the part that I explained about globalization that people don't understand. And it was never explained to you. You never understood it. People don't understand. It was never explained to them adequately. It was like a big con job, actually. And it's one of the reasons why I call the media and I say the media has failed. And what do you hear me say? I use the 4 C's. They're corporate, they're controlled, they're corrupt. And what's the 4th one? What's the 4th one that I say? They're complicit. And the last word I usually use is complicit, because they have gone along with the prevailing winds. And one of the prevailing winds was, we're going to talk about, but we're going to, and one of the prevailing winds was that we're going to talk about, but it was sublimated in terms like the talking head shows, like the old McLaughlin group, which was a popular one at the time. And this was going on, but we're never really going to tell the people what it means. We're just going to tell them not to worry. And it's just like that scene, remember, from the movie Goodfellas, where the one character comes into the other character and says, "You're worrying." And then he cups his face with his hands and he says, "Stop worrying. Don't worry. What are you worrying about?" I mean, they've committed some huge criminal act, Everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be beautiful, remember? And that's what they did to you. They said, there's going to be new jobs. There's going to be new opportunities. There's nothing to worry about, when in fact, there was everything to worry about. Because globalization took away the full set economy that existed in the United States. And a full set economy is absolutely positively something that you have to have. This is why we used to pejoratively talk about people who lived in banana republics, because what was their economy? It was bananas. They didn't have a full set industrial economy. They didn't have industry. They didn't have factories. They didn't have all the things that the United States has. That's a full set economy. Okay? And so we speak pejoratively about banana republics because they don't have economic power in the same way that we do. So what happened was the people who perpetrated this took away the full set economy that existed in the United States and transferred it to other countries. In other parts of the world, people who often were our enemies. Separate economic zones, a la the Trilateral Commission. It transferred that to them. It left you with these promises that a new sector was going to develop and there would be new opportunities and everything was fine. It's beautiful. What are you worried about? It's going to be beautiful. But it wasn't. People literally lost their lives and all of their preconceptions. And actually, at this point, let's take another break, and we'll be back. This is Politics by Jake. And now here's a word from one of our sponsors, Twain Consulting. Hi, this is Jake with Twain Consulting. Imagine, if you will, having the power to disappear from the prying eyes of creditors, identity thieves, nosy strangers, all while protecting what you've worked so hard to build. That's what virtual invisibility offers. It's not magic. It's smart legal and business strategy to shield your assets and privacy so you can live free, confident, and in control. Most people think that asset protection is only for the ultra wealthy, but it's for anyone who wants peace of mind and financial security, including you. Don't wait until it's too late. Take control now. Call me at 213-465-0639 or go to facebook.com/Twain Consulting to learn how virtual invisibility can protect you and your family, because when you're invisible to risk, you're unstoppable. And now let's get back to Jake and Politics by Jake. Okay, and this is Politics by Jake, and we are back. And on Politics by Jake, I break down political and economic realities so you can understand what's actually happening and how to position yourself. Now, if you want this kind of analysis applied to your personal financial situation, your business financial situation, I do offer private one-on-one strategy sessions. Link is in the description. With that said, let's get back to what it is we were talking about. So, people literally lost their lives, and this is predatory extraction that we're talking about here. And yes, it occurred in globalization, but globalization is a systemic example of predatory extraction, and I'm likening it to, and people can say, and people do say, oh, Hollywood, it lies to you. Hollywood tells you a lot of stuff that's going on, and it's very valuable that way. So let's go ahead and let's continue this comparison and see where it goes. People literally lost their lives because of this predatory extractive thing. All of their preconceptions about themselves, whether they're correct or otherwise, and let's not even get into that, were destroyed, and they were shattered. And I'm talking about guilt. I'm talking about humiliation. I'm talking about self-immolation. I'm talking about self-castigation. I'm talking about self-fault finding. And I'm talking about the embarrassment about not being able to do for your children what your father did for you or what your parents did for you. I'm talking about all of this. And then you're faced with bankruptcy, which is considered to be the ultimate failure, and it's not. And the thing that I want to point out to you, all of you who are listening or viewing and have clients, and I have clients who are I'm going through it right now. I'm not doing their bankruptcies. I do business advisory, but I have clients who have been with me for a long time, and they're going through it right now, and they're struggling with it in the same way. It's the same thing. I'm counseling them because I'm a business advisor. It's part of what I do. And I say to you that when you consider your own situation, and I know that you tried hard. I know you didn't press the bankruptcy button at the drop of a hat. I know you tried hard and you did everything you could to avoid this, but it has come upon you. And I say to you, and this is important, this is deeply important, that you have to consider the fact that you were lied to, and that a rape of the industrial capacity and industrial full set economy of the United States has occurred, and a theft has occurred, and a plunder has occurred, and it was done to impoverish you, because the people who did this, they didn't care about you. They're not capitalists. All they cared about is themselves. And you see now in the 2020s, you see the heritage of it. You see the fruit of it. You see that we have billionaires, we have oligarchs, we have technogarchs, we even have trillionaires now. Elon Musk is a trillionaire, and this is the heritage of it. and they have not followed the rules of capitalism in Adam Smith. They have not considered risk. They have tried to minimize risk in every single possible way that they could. That's not capitalism. That is something else that I call predatory extraction. And it's the same thing that criminals do. And I hail back to the movie, as I have referred to and will refer to now again, Goodfellas, where the mob boss sent somebody in to disrupt the operations of a restaurant, and through his insultive behavior, his violent behavior, his coarse criminal-like behavior, disrupted the operations of the restaurant, caused the restaurateur who owned the restaurant to lose customers, not knowing that the mob boss was in on it at the very beginning of it, and that he purposely sent that person in there in order to do those things because he had looked upon that as a target and he wanted that restaurant. And the restaurateur, not going to this, not knowing this, goes to the mob boss and says, maybe you could help out, and ask this criminal. He's a criminal. I encourage you to watch the movie. His name is Paulie. To ask this criminal for help, and this person has a predatory extractive mentality. He has a criminal mentality. And as it is explained in the movie, once you do that, it's like a free ticket. Because Paulie is basically, and his criminal enterprise, his predatory extractive criminal enterprise, is basically going to take over the operation. And he's going to leverage it in every possible way that he can. And he's going to use all the techniques in order to extract without any care whatsoever about the business itself. He doesn't care about the business, about the feelings of the restaurateur, and certainly not about the customers. Every last thing that he can get out of it. And if you watch the movie, you see in the final scene, expertly portrayed in that particular segment, where two of them are in the restaurant after hours, and they're basically setting it up to commit arson, and they're lighting it on fire. And the voiceover says essentially, when you couldn't take another nickel out of the place, you busted it up, you burned it down, and you collected money on the insurance for the arson. That's predatory extraction. That's not capitalism. And you must understand that that is what has been done to you. And moreover, I would say you must understand that Donald Trump, who Jamie Dimon in 2024 in January in Davos, Switzerland, said, we're all in for Trump, is indicting himself, and rightly he should be indicted, as a predatory extractive person, not a capitalist. This is a man who's failed in business 8 times. He almost blew his entire $413 million inheritance that he received from his father on failed enterprises. I mean, come on. And all those and you don't think that all those billionaires, you don't think Jamie Dimon knows this? CEO of JP Morgan Chase said, we're all in it for Trump. They know what he is. He's a puppet. He's ultimately a sad individual. He wants to be something that he's not. They're using him. He's actually a pathetic individual. He's a failed businessman. He's a white-collar criminal, and he's other things that are even worse than that. And he's a convicted felon 30 times over, and they knew their man. And that's why he's in the White House. And all of these billionaires are going along with it and are being complicit, including the media. So you have been raped. You have been plundered. You have been exploited, and a system has put you at the mercy of those who care nothing about you. They care nothing about your partner. They care nothing about your children, and they care nothing about your community, except for exactly as in the movie Goodfellas, for what it is that they could take from you, while relying, and this is perhaps the greatest defense of all, while relying on your adherence to those very principles of morality, and it hasn't worked, has it? Regardless of whatever you could do, because it was never their intention to be honest with you. And you were wounded because they knew you would rely on these things, expected you to rely on these things, counted on you to rely on these things, used their shills and their ringers to exhort you to rely on these things, all the while knowing. And that is the wound. And it is a grave wound indeed. And at this point, let's take another break and we will be back. And this is Politics by Jake. And now here's a word from one of our sponsors, Twain Consulting. Hi, this is Jake with Twain Consulting. Let's be blunt, shall we? America is litigious. It's unstable, and it's financially weaponized. If your name is on everything you own, you're a sitting duck. At Twain Consulting, we help you vanish legally, ethically, and permanently. From land trusts to layered LLCs, we teach you how to restructure your assets so the predators can't see them and can't touch them. This isn't a loophole. It's a strategy that the wealthy have used for decades. Isn't it time you got the same protection? Call Twain Consulting at 805-380-5699 or visit us online. Protect what's yours before someone else claims it. And now let's get back to Jake and Politics by Jake. Okay, and this is Politics by Jake, and we're back. On Politics by Jake, I break down political and economic reality so you can understand what's actually happening and how to position yourself so that you can be safe and so that you can increase and enhance your wealth and protect yourself against loss. If you want this kind of analysis applied to directly to your situation, your personal, your business, financial situation, I do offer private strategy, one-on-one strategy sessions, and the link is in the description. And with that, let's continue. So, okay, in other words, the distinction I'm trying to draw, it's funny the show went to this because this wasn't necessarily, it's definitional, and it is important to talk about definitions. These aren't the definitions that I thought I was going to talk about. Whether one agrees with every example it's a separate question. The conceptual distinction that I'm making, in my opinion, and you can say, Jake, no, it's not, but I think it's perfectly intelligible. And I think that's why the Goodfellas analogy is something that I continue to use, and it keeps showing up. I'm not describing, and I don't intend to describe ordinary profit. I'm describing a process where people gain influence, or systems gain influence over an asset. They extract maximum value in every single way they can. If there's insurance money and they can destroy the asset and gain the insurance money after they've taken out everything else that they can, they do it. They extract maximum value. They transfer the risk to other people. In the case of Goodfellas, the restaurateur was the one who got it in the neck. They didn't. They leave the damaged institution behind. That's what I call predatory extraction. And you have examples of this in real life. Mitt Romney was one of these. He was a luminary. He was a presidential candidate. He actually thought he was going to win. He was involved in Bain Capital. Bain Capital, in many cases, was a predatorily extractive organization that utilized this system in order to do what it did. There's a popular movie documentary that came out called When Mitt Romney Came to Town. And it is exactly this kind of thing that is described. It's not capitalism, it's predatory extraction. And so with that, I think we're at the end of the show, and we will be back, God willing, tomorrow to do part 2 of the show. And we hope you will join us then. And this has been Politics by Jake. Bye now. And now here's a word from one of our sponsors, Twain Consulting. Hi, Hi, this is Jake with Twain Consulting. Imagine, if you will, having the power to disappear from the prying eyes of creditors, identity thieves, nosy strangers, all while protecting what you've worked so hard to build. That's what virtual invisibility offers. It's not magic. It's smart legal and business strategy to shield your assets and privacy so you can live free, confident, and in control. Most people think that asset protection is only for the ultra-wealthy, but it's for anyone who wants peace of mind and financial security, including you. Don't wait until it's too late. Take control now. Call me at 213-465-0639 or go to facebook.com/Twain Consulting to learn how virtual invisibility can protect you and your family, because when you're invisible to risk, you're unstoppable. Now let's get back to Jake and Politics by Jake.